Andres de AA Sports, welcome to the channel. I am back with more Mexico National Football Team content, and in this video I will be talking about their final two games of the 2024 year in the CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinals, which were their final games for Mexico in 2024. The Mexico national team lost 2-0 in their first game of their quarterfinals series against Honduras, but ended up completing La Remontada at home in the second leg, winning 4-0, with the final aggregate being 4-2 for Mexico. Here are Mexico's grades for this two-game series. Goalkeepers, B. Guillermo Ochoa was the starting goalkeeper in the first leg. He made 3 saves in the game, but also conceded 2 goals. Granted, the first goal conceded came on a rebound after he made the first save. Now, many fans will try to criticize him and say that he should have deflected it away from the center of the field or out of bounds. They'll try to cherry pick moments to say Ochoa is old and, tronco, despite still being a player, even a starter in Europe, in Portugal. Now, I will say it could be a fair criticism to say he should have tried to deflect the ball out of bounds. However, that goal conceded overall was not his fault, given it was mainly caused by Cesar Montes' major error. The second goal was also not ideal, and it definitely hurt his grade there. But outside of that, he was good during the first half, so it wasn't his worst performance by any means. So Ochoa's performance individually, I would say, was a C grade. Nevertheless, Javier Aguirre decided to start Malagon in the second leg, who had a really strong performance in the moments where he was needed in the game. On the 2 counterattacks Honduras actually had in their mostly defense-based second game, Malagon made both saves and kept a clean sheet. A solid performance amid being in great form with America. So to give both goalkeepers an overall grade, I will say they had a B grade. Center backs, B. Cesar Montes had an absolute howler of a performance in the first game. He looked lost in the second half and made an awful blunder where he gave the ball away right to Luis Palma, resulting in the first goal for Honduras. Israel Reyes starting alongside Montes also didn't help in the first leg, given Reyes is a better right back than center back. Reyes gave Palma way too much space and time, while Montes was behind the play and non-existent in that moment, and Palma was able to capitalize on it and score again to lead Honduras to the win in the first leg. Reyes also didn't show good form in the first leg. With that, Aguirre, who we will talk about later, adjusted his starting lineup defensively and kept Montes in the lineup, but instead started Chiquete Orozco alongside Montes. This ended up being a great decision and correction by Aguirre, as Orozco played really well with an assist to Raul for the first goal and a great tackle to stop a Honduran counterattack. Montes also had a much better game with a tackle won as well, and a good game without having the burden of helping out Israel Reyes. Overall, I will give the center backs a B. They had a bad game in Honduras, but played better in the second leg. However, the center back's performance grades definitely showed that Johan Vasquez is clearly the best center back for Mexico right now. And it's Vasquez who elevates the skill of Montes and the defense as a whole. Unfortunately, he was unable to play in these games because he was recovering from an injury. His absence definitely affected how the defense played in the first game, and Mexico cannot wait to have him back in the lineup with Montes and or Chiquete. Fullbacks. Overall for both games, I will say B-. Jesus Angulo and Jorge Sanchez were the starting fullbacks in San Pedro Sula for the first game, and they didn't do well at all. Angulo looked mediocre at best, and Sanchez was unable to contribute offensively at all. Both were physically outplayed by the Honduran wingers and offensive front, and they looked slow on the field. Aguirre later made changes in the wingback positions as well, and in Toluca, Jesus Gallardo and Rodrigo Huescas were the starters for the second game. Gallardo, I thought, was definitely better than Angulo in his performance and was able to push up and keep up with the pace of play compared to Jesus Angulo. As for Rodrigo Huescas, I think he was solid defensively and was also able to push up. However, his crosses into the box were not the best. Granted, This was his first start and in a serious game for La Selección, so it's possible it was out of first game nervous feelings. Overall, though, I don't think Huescas was bad, and I do think he is better than Sanchez and one of the two best right backs we have with Julian Araujo, who, as we know, is playing in the Premier League. And I know it sounds crazy to criticize Sanchez and say Huescas is better, given Jorge Sanchez scored just an absolute gem of a goal on a chested half volley in the second game. And to give Jorge Sanchez credit, that was a great goal, especially coming in as a substitute. However, he performed well as a substitute under less pressure than someone who's in your starting 11. And the goal came as Honduras' defense completely collapsed. He also missed an open net opportunity prior to his goal. Showing his ability to contribute consistently on offense is still very much a concern. Yikers. Going forward, I won't be surprised if we see Aguirre and Marquez decide to only call up Sanchez as a substitute and have Huesca start more, and for Sanchez to be competing for a position on the team with Araujo. Overall, though, B- grade performance with adjustments and better performances in the second game. Midfielders, B-. In the first leg, there were some very questionable decisions made by Javier Aguirre. He had the team playing a 4-2-3-1 formation in Honduras with only Luis Chavez and Edson Alvarez in the midfield, while putting Orbelin Pineda, who is a midfielder for Athens, up front in the striker position. That was a very poor decision by Aguirre as coach, as he did the same thing Jaime Lozano did last year of playing Orbelin Pineda outside of his normal position. Aguirre later scrapped this lineup in the second game and had Edson Alvarez and Luis Romo start together, and they both played pretty well together. Romo and Edson are starting to look like a strong duo in the midfield. Charlie Rodriguez also started in the midfield in Toluca, and hey, at least for once it wasn't an 11v10 with him on the field being a liability. However, he was mostly non-existent except for getting a yellow card. Overall, though, I do like how the midfield improved, but with Charlie on the field, I do think the improvements weren't perfectly executed. So B- I think is fair. Wingers, B- as well. In the first game, there were also poor decisions made by Aguirre in what position he started the players. The most notable of these poor decisions was starting Julian Quiñones on the right side when he never plays the right side. He has never played the right wing side during his time in Liga MX or with Alcadicia, so why Aguirre put him there was very, very strange. Quiñones was still able to create a chance in the first game despite this and had a shot blocked by Honduran goalkeeper Endrick Menjivar. But outside of that, he couldn't create. He surprisingly didn't get playing time in the second game, but granted with how the team performed and Honduras failing, he really didn't have to. There was no need to get Quiñones out there and potentially risk injury when everybody else on the field is doing good. Why walk away from something that's good? Chino Huerta also started in the first game, but he got outplayed and wasn't able to produce chances. He ended up coming back in as a substitute in the second leg, and he did look a bit better, but it was still a relatively quieter game from him. Alexis Gutierrez also got to make his debut for the national team as a starter in the second game. I thought that was cool to see, a new face immediately put to the test and given a chance. He did struggle a little bit, but granted, it was his first game for Mexico in a tough home environment with big expectations in a serious game for the team. I do think he can in the future find a spot on the team with good form and that he can develop within a couple of years. Nevertheless, I do like that Aguirre is willing to try new players and hopefully we see new faces like this in more games. Overall, I thought the best winger for Mexico in these two games was Alexis Vega. For the first time in a while, he really stepped up. He had an assist in the second game and made some clean passes. He is kind of like a winger that kind of moves around back and forth all over the place, but because he can pass the ball well while doing that, it is what has made him so vital for Toluca. With good form, and should he keep up good behavior off the field, maybe the second chance he has been given will end up aging well and being deserved. Strikers. A. Raul was the starting striker in both games, not a surprise given his good form with Fulham so far, and he once again showed that good form in these games. He was really the only player who was constantly passing well and trying to create in the tough first leg loss, and in the second game he scored a gem of a goal off a great cross from Chiquete Orozco. Raul Jimenez right now is showing excellent form, and he has very much locked up the starting spot. And it is nice to see him back in great form after what he has been through with the injury he had at Wolves. Henry Martin, unsurprisingly, was also called up for these games. This comes as Santi Jimenez has been recovering from injury with that pulled hamstring. Martin didn't play in the first leg, but was subbed on in the second leg, and for the first time in a long while on a big stage, he actually contributed and didn't look like a system fraud. He was wide open on a corner kick and scored the second goal for Mexico on a perfect play where the oceans practically parted for him. And in the final minutes when Mexico was awarded a penalty kick, Henry Martin scored the final goal in the game for the doblete. Originally they wanted Raul to take the kick, but he declined it and Henry took it instead. I would have loved to see Raul get the 2-goal game on the stats, but having someone else they trust score, it's also fine by me. I will give Henry credit. As much as I call him, a system player and criticize him and say he's the Dak Prescott of Liga MX who will vanish in the big stages, that is one place where you can trust Henry. If you need a guy to take a penalty kick and make it on command, Henry Martin is that guy. He won't miss penalty kicks. So it was nice to see him perform well and capitalize on scoring chances as Honduras collapsed defensively. Angel Sepulveda got playing time in the first leg, but looked slow and outside of his element with the national team. He may be good with Cruz Azul and in their system, but it didn't look like he fit well within Aguirre's system on first impressions. Memo Martinez also got playing time, and he underwhelmed massively as well, and had a non-existent performance compared to Henry and Raul. Fortunately for them, they really weren't needed like some prime starters since Raul and Henry played well. Raul Jimenez and Henry Martin really make the grade for the Mexico national team in these games, and since they were the main strikers, I will give the strikers an A grade. Head coach. While there were questionable decisions he made in the first game in Honduras, I'm giving Javier Aguirre an A. He is the reason La Remontada, the comeback, was successful in Toluca. In the first game with Vasquez out, without Santi and some newer returning faces, he was experimenting to see what he had in his roster and was taking risks to learn what would and wouldn't work to prepare for the second leg. Looking back at these games, I think Aguirre treated the second game as the game that really mattered. And the first game was the one to take risks to try and win the aggregate, to win the war. And that's what Vasco Aguirre did. He experimented in the first game, and in the areas and decisions that didn't work well, he admitted to those poor decisions and mistakes and made adjustments. If you compare the starting lineup for both games, Aguirre made eight changes to the starting lineup. And while it wasn't executed perfectly with players like Charlie starting and being non-existent, nothing new, it overall worked well. Chiquete Orozco was great on the field, and 3 of the goals came from players he subbed in that second game. There were both pre-game and in-game adjustments, and adjustments we didn't see under the previous 3 head coaches, and he completely outcoached Honduras and Reinaldo Rueda, who didn't make adjustments and collapsed under the same defensive strategy that they lost under last year. Aguirre was coaching in a way where he was taking risks and doing all he could to win the aggregate, while Reinaldo Rueda for Honduras looked as if he was coaching to try and simply survive and not lose, parking the bus and playing defense only. Rueda had a strategy for Honduras, while Javier Aguirre had had good planning, a great strategy with creativity and unique style of play for Mexico. And there's a big difference in that. And we saw it in that second game. In Toluca, the coaching duel between Rueda and Aguirre was the biggest mismatch of not just the game, but the two-game series. Rueda won the battle in Honduras to give Aguirre his first loss under his third tenure with the Mexican national team, but Javier Aguirre won the war. Overall, a great result for Mexico, a great coaching masterclass from Aguirre, with the offensive front in great form, led by Raúl Jiménez. With this win in the aggregate, they have qualified and sealed their spot for the 2025 Gold Cup and the CONCACAF Nations League semifinals in March. As of now, their next game will be a big matchup in the Nations League semifinals against Canada on March 20th in SoFi Stadium, Los Angeles. Let me know what you think of the two-game series and Mexico's success in the comments. That is all for me in this video. Leave a like and subscribe to help support the channel and help me get to 50 to 100 subscribers. So who knows, maybe I can start live streaming sports talk episodes. Also, feel free to check out my other sports content on the channel, from the 49ers to NHL as well. That is all for me. Vamos, Mexico.